The town of Villisca, Iowa, is quiet now. Trees line the streets like old sentinels, their branches swaying gently in the wind, casting long shadows across lawns where nothing much happens anymore. The houses look like paintings, still, silent, perfectly placed, but one house is different. On the corner of East 2nd Street stands an old white house with peeling paint and windows that seem to watch you back. During the day, it blends in, almost forgettable. But at night, when the world quiets down and the wind whistles just right, people say the house speaks. Some hear footsteps pacing upstairs. Some hear children crying. Some see the shape of a man, holding something heavy in his hand. The house is known by a name that chills the air around it: the Villisca Axe Murder House. In 1912, 8 people were brutally murdered inside. 6 of them were children. The case was never solved. No one was ever arrested. Locals say the souls never left. People who spend the night there, and some do for thrill or research or curiosity, speak of voices in the dark, of doors creaking, open on their own, of icy hands brushing past them in the stillness. Emma had heard all of it. She didn't believe in ghosts, not really. But as she stood at the edge of the property, the sky turning purple with the setting sun, she felt it. A weight, a whisper, something buried deep in the silence. And that night, she would stay in the house, alone. Emma had always been drawn to forgotten places. As a quiet, content creator who loved telling strange and mysterious stories in simple English, she spent her time visiting abandoned homes, old churches, and places long swallowed by history. Her soft-spoken voice, calm storytelling, and thoughtful presence had earned her a small but loyal audience online. She wasn't a ghost hunter. She didn't carry EMF detectors or spirit boxes. All she brought was a small camera, a journal, and a microphone. Her approach was simple: observe, listen, and share what she felt. And tonight, her path led her to Villisca. The town had been friendly in that small-town way. People smiled but didn't linger. When she asked about the house, their faces changed, a little tighter, a little paler. Some shook their heads and walked away. One elderly man at the diner had simply said, "That house doesn't sleep." She had smiled politely. Now, standing at the gate, Emma studied the house. It was small, 2 stories with a narrow porch and faded white siding. The grass in the yard was overgrown. A wooden sign by the path read, "The Villisca Axe Murder House, House 12." She took a breath and stepped inside. The door creaked as it opened. The air was stale but not foul, just old, like it hadn't moved in a long time. Dust motes danced in the slanted evening light coming through the front windows. Inside, the house felt too quiet. Not peaceful, just waiting. She walked through the rooms. The kitchen still had an icebox. The dining table was set oddly neat, as if someone had just cleaned it. Upstairs, the children's room held 2 small beds, the covers slightly wrinkled. Toys sat neatly on a shelf: a wooden horse, a cracked porcelain doll, a small red ball. She set up her sleeping bag in the hallway between the children's room and the master bedroom. She preferred not to sleep inside the rooms. It felt more respectful. The camera was set on a tripod facing the hallway. Her microphone sat clipped to her hoodie. As the sun disappeared and the house dipped into shadow, Emma turned on a single lantern. She clicked the record button. "I'm here in the Villisca house," she said gently. "It's quiet, still, cold, but it doesn't feel empty." She paused. Let's see what the night has to say. The first hour passed peacefully. Emma sat against the wall reading quietly by lantern light. The house groaned now and then, but that was expected. Old wood settles, wind moves. Around 9:30 p.m., she noticed the temperature drop. Her breath became visible in the beam of her lantern. She pulled her hoodie tighter but didn't say anything. Not yet. Then came the soft sound of something rolling. She looked up. The red ball that had been sitting on the toy shelf in the children's room now rested in the hallway, halfway between the door and her feet. She hadn't heard it fall, only roll. Emma leaned forward slowly. "Thank you for sharing that," she whispered. "Is there something you'd like to say?" Silence. She turned the camera slightly toward the ball and resumed sitting. Midnight arrived. Her journal notes grew shorter, her handwriting tighter. She felt something was changing. The air grew heavier. The shadows in the corners looked deeper. Then came the first sound. Footsteps. Upstairs. Not loud. Just the soft creak of pressure on old wood. One step, then another. She froze, heart steady, but alert. No one else was in the house. "Is someone there?" she asked calmly. No reply. The footsteps stopped. At 2:13 a.m., the microphone picked up a whisper. She didn't hear it in the moment, but later, while reviewing the audio, it was clear. "Stay." The voice was soft. Female. Not angry. Not cruel. Just sad. The lantern flickered. She decided to sit in complete silence, eyes closed, listening. In the stillness, the house spoke, not with words, but with presence. The air around her grew colder. Her skin prickled. Her heart slowed. Behind her, a door creaked open. She opened her eyes and turned. The master bedroom door, which had been shut since she arrived, now stood ajar. No sound. No breeze. Just open. She didn't move. The camera lens fogged slightly. The red ball was now beside her sleeping bag. She hadn't heard it move. The morning light hadn't arrived yet. Emma stood by the front door, her hand resting on the old brass handle. The house was still wrapped in darkness, and her breath formed pale clouds in the cool air. She should have been leaving. Her overnight vigil was done. But something held her there. Something deeper than curiosity. She glanced down at the recorder, in her bag, then back at the staircase. The carved word, "stay," echoed in her mind. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to write it off as a strange trick of light and wood. But something inside urged her to go back upstairs. One final time, to see what the house wanted to show her. Slowly, quietly, she climbed the staircase. The boards didn't creak this time. It was as if the house was holding its breath. She reached the top, her flashlight low, sweeping gently across the hall. The children's room was unchanged. But as she passed by it, she felt that strange pull again. Not toward the bedrooms. Toward the attic. The attic door had always been closed, locked. The tour guide earlier had mentioned that guests weren't allowed up there, not because of safety, but out of respect. That's where the killer was believed to have hidden, waiting in the dark for hours before striking. Emma paused at the small door that led to it. Her fingers hovered over the latch. Something whispered behind it. Not a word this time. A soft, slow exhale. She opened the door. The attic was small and close. Wooden beams arched low. A single hanging bulb offered a weak yellow glow, but Emma didn't turn it on. Instead, she stepped into the darkness with only her flashlight. Dust floated like ash in the beam of light. Cobwebs stretched across the ceiling like threads of forgotten time. The space was empty. No furniture, no toys, just old air. But the moment she stepped fully inside, the door behind her shut on its own. Click. Emma didn't panic. She took a long, quiet breath and whispered, "It's all right. I'm not here to hurt you." Then she noticed the cold. A strange cold. Not the kind that seeped through walls in old houses, but a sudden, concentrated chill that seemed to surround her like a breath on the back of her neck. Her flashlight flickered. Then again, in the moment of brief darkness, she saw something. A figure. Not solid, not shadow. A pale outline standing in the corner. Tall, motionless. Her heart didn't race. She was calm, still, but every part of her was focused. The light came back on. The corner was empty, but the cold remained, and now there was a sound, not breathing, not whispering. Crying. A low, broken sob that echoed from behind one of the attic beams. Emma stepped forward, slowly, carefully. "Are you the one who did this?" she asked. Her voice didn't accuse. It mourned. The crying stopped. Then came a voice, as low, gravelly, not like the whispers before. I waited. Emma felt a chill pass through her spine. They never saw me. I was there. I watched them sleep. She turned toward the beam. The flashlight dimmed. The air thickened, pressing against her lungs. I didn't mean to, but it wouldn't stop. A pause. Then, it never stops. Emma whispered, "Who are you?" Silence. And then came the image, not through her eyes, but in her mind. A flash. A man, sitting in the attic, holding an axe, breathing heavy, listening to the sounds of a family downstairs, his eyes wide, his hands shaking, and something behind him. A shadow, darker than dark, whispering things into his ears. He hadn't come alone. The killer hadn't acted alone. He'd brought something with him. Or it had brought him. Emma stepped back slowly. This wasn't just about a man who had snapped. It was about something deeper, something ancient, something that had fed on what happened here, and maybe had never left. The recorder in her backpack clicked on by itself, the me. Red light blinked once. Emma didn't run. She simply turned around and opened the attic door again. It wasn't locked anymore. She walked downstairs calmly, slowly. The house was quiet again, almost peaceful. The sun was rising outside. Soft light filtered in through the old curtains, brushing warmth against the wallpaper, the rocking chair, the kitchen table. Emma picked up her backpack, slipped on her coat, and turned back for one last look. "I understand now," she whispered. "You weren't just victims, and he wasn't just a man." She stepped outside. The screen door creaked shut behind her. And the Villisca Axe murder house, still silent, old, and breathing, returned to its long, quiet wait. Emma didn't speak much during the drive home. The roads were quiet, bordered by bare trees and wide frostbitten fields. Her fingers tapped gently on the steering wheel, not from nerves but from thought, deep, quiet thought. The morning sun peeked through thin clouds. It was a beautiful day, peaceful even, but something inside her had shifted. She had gone to Villisca expecting to record cold walls and creaky floors, maybe a bump in the night, a whisper caught on tape. But what she left with was something else entirely. Not just evidence, but understanding. Not everything in that house was evil. Some of it was grief, pain, a sorrow so heavy it stayed behind, long after the last breath was taken, and something darker, something that had whispered from the attic, had fed on that grief, had used it, twisted it. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the recorder. The little red light blinked, faintly still on. Emma pressed play, At first, there was nothing but the sound of her own footsteps. Her voice, the faint rustle of her coat, then a faint sob, then, it never stops. She listened, not just with her ears, with her heart. And then the recorder stopped by itself, the battery still full, but it had finished its message. She placed it back into her bag softly. Some stories weren't meant to be told with excitement. They needed quiet, respect. Emma didn't feel afraid. She felt humbled. As the fields passed by and the road stretched ahead, she knew she would return one day, not for fame, not for proof, but to sit quietly in the place where sorrow still lived and let it be heard. That night, as Emma unpacked her things and placed the recorder on her bedside table, she heard a sound, soft, almost forgotten, like the hush of footsteps across an attic floor. She didn't panic. She simply turned off the light and lay still, listening to the quiet. And in the silence, a thought came to her. Not frightening, not urgent, just simple, clear. Some places don't want to forget. They want to be remembered exactly as they were.